Daniel Suarez is expected to join Spire Motorsports in the Cup Series in 2026, and Justin Love will return to Richard Childress Racing in 26. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start by talking about the Talladega Cup race. As reported by the NASCAR Insights account yesterday, the Talladega Cup race had 27 different leaders and 77 lead changes for the event. I believe this is the third or fourth most lead changes we've seen in the Cup Series race in Cup history, and I believe it's the third most lead changes we have seen in a Cup race ever. I believe only the 2010 Talladega race and 2008 Talladega races have more leaders than this. It was a pretty competitive race at points. Yes, it was difficult to pass, a lot of gridlock, a lot of fuel saving throughout, but the end of the race I thought was really spectacular, fun to watch. I think it's some interesting facts for sure. Nonetheless, pretty impressive stats to look at for the Talladega Cup Series race that took place yesterday. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Trackhouse Racing. As Trackhouse Racing made history for themselves, as over the weekend they won their first MotoGP race at the Australian Grand Prix with Ralph Fernandez, who's been driving for the organization for the last year or so, picking up the win for Trackhouse Racing. Trackhouse now won a race in the NASCAR Cup Series, and now they've picked up the win in MotoGP. Say what you want to say about Trackhouse performance on the Cup Series side. It's impressive to see what they have been accomplishing outside of NASCAR, what they've been doing in MotoGP. They picked up some podiums throughout the year, and Ralph Fernandez is a pretty good driver. So to see that Trackhouse now has wins in the Cup Series and also now has wins in MotoGP, I think that's incredible. Congratulations to Trackhouse on picking up the win in victory at the MotoGP event. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Ryan Vargas. As Ryan Vargas did talk after the race that he made his Monster Jam debut and he won his first ever Monster Jam overall event. Ryan Vargas is now, I believe, competing for wins in the NASCAR Euro Series, has been racing in so many different series over the years, and to see him now go out there and win a Monster Jam event, that is absolutely incredible. There's not many drivers who've raced in NASCAR who've gone to Monster Jam and have been super, super competitive right off the bat to win in the Monster Jam Series. Yes, all the equipment is pretty much the same because Monster Jam does provide a lot of the equipment, but I still think it's pretty incredible to see that Ryan Vargas, in his first ever time running a Monster Jam event, can go out there and pick up the win and pick up his first ever overall event. There's a lot of guys competing and a lot of drivers racing in this, so once again, congratulations to Ryan on picking up the win. A well-earned and well-deserved victory. Once again, congratulations to him on winning the Monster Jam event this past weekend, and he's going to run another Monster Jam event for the end of the year. Congrats to Ryan on picking up the win and the victory. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Rico Abreu. Now, Rico Abreu has picked up his first ever High Limit Championship and wins the 2025 High Limit Championship. Rico Abreu had been extremely consistent throughout the 2025 season and picked up multiple wins throughout the 2025 year as well. Rico coming over from the World of Outlaws series. Of course, he will be back in the High Limit series once again in 2026 with Tony Stewart Racing coming in. Rico will manage that operation in 2026. Tony won't be as involved with that as, of course, he's still focused on NHRA. But Rico will be going in with a lot of confidence looking to go back to back. So congratulations to Rico on winning the High Limit Championship this year. A well-earned and well-deserved championship with how strong and how many wins he picked up throughout the year. Coming over from the World of Outlaws, having success over there, and now coming over to race in the High Limit Series. Once again, congratulations to Rico on picking up the win, and congratulations to him on winning the 2025 High Limit Championship. Congrats to him on getting it done. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Landon Lewis. As Landon Lewis has won the 2025 Cars Tour Late Model Stock Car Championship, his first ever championship in the Cars Tour. Congratulations to Landon Lewis on winning the Cars Tour Championship. This is not a surprise. Landon has been on the rise in the Cars Tour over the course of the last couple years. And Landon Lewis, I believe, just turned 18 years old last year, or I believe this year. He has been phenomenal in the Cars Tour this year. He's been super consistent. He's won a lot of races this year. Yes, he drives for Kevin Harvick Incorporated and is a KHI development driver, but he has been just really, really good with the Rackley team this season. And it's not a surprise to see him go out there and pick up the championship. Obviously, I think there's there's a lot of people who are very high on Landon Lewis at this point, who think Landon Lewis has a lot of promise and a lot of potential here. And I think Landon is going to be someone for many years who's going to be phenomenal racing in the sport. To see him go out there win the Car Store Championship, that is phenomenal. Congratulations to him on winning the Car Store Championship this year. A well-earned and well-deserved championship in the 2025 year. Once again, congratulations to him on winning the 2025 Car Store Championship, a well-earned championship. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Rick Allen. As reported by Adam Stern, I believe on Friday, that the CW has given Rick Allen some assignments in basketball and will call some basketball games on the CW in 2025. I believe he's going to be calling a game from Nebraska, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, which of course Rick Allen, I believe, is from Nebraska, if I'm not mistaken. And he will be also calling a couple other basketball games throughout the year as well. It is really good to see that Rick Allen is back on the air calling games once again. I really wish he was calling, especially the Truck Series at this point. But we'll talk about how bad Fox is. I'm not sure if he wants to be involved, how bad Fox has been, especially with everything across the board, not just their NASCAR coverage, but also their other coverage for the NFL, among other things as well. Nonetheless, I'm happy to see that Rick Allen is back calling games once again. He's done a phenomenal job. I actually listened to him call some of the games of college football, and I think he's actually done a pretty good job so far. So good for Rick. Glad to see him getting his opportunities to work in the sport once again back in calling games. Congratulations on the opportunity, and glad to see he'll be getting the opportunity to continue working with the CW going forward in the future. Great job by him to call some of those games, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the United States Grand Prix. Now we're going to talk about the race here in just a short little bit, but it was announced, I believe, on Saturday going into Sunday that the United States Grand Prix at Circuit Americas has been officially extended through the 2034 season. It's remembered throughout this week there was an expectation that they were going to extend the contract throughout 2033 and 2034, and now it's been confirmed. This does not surprise me. I think their contract was up after 2025 or 2026. So they were going into a contract year on the deal to sign it, and now they'll be back with the United States Grand Prix at Circuit Americas. I really like this move. I think Circuit Americas is a really, really good track at points. I will say the Formula One race was not that exciting from what I saw this year, but I will say I love COTA. It's a great track. The facility's really, really good. They do a great job getting that track up. The organization's good. So it makes a lot of sense to continue racing on there. Sometimes these contracts, of course, can be broken if people aren't interested, which the fan attendance has been pretty good for COTA, so it's still pretty good, and nonetheless, congratulations that USGP will continue being around. It's been extended through 2034. Happy to see this and glad to see that it will be continuing through the 2034 year. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Mohammed Ben Sulayem. As it was confirmed on Friday afternoon that Mohammed Ben Sulayem will remain as a FIA president for at least the next 5 years, as the guy who was running against him, Tim Mayer, has officially dropped out due to political reasons, and he's dropped out because he wasn't getting the support and the opportunity to continue being the FIA president or take over. Mohammed Ben Sulayem has been the FIA president for the last couple of years, and there's been a lot of criticism on how Mohammed Ben Sulayem has been running FIA and Formula One as well. There's been a lot of ethics issues from what a lot of people said with the FIA, and a lot of people are wanting a change to happen and wanting a new person to come in so that change can actually be made at the racetracks. It can be made to help Formula One grow, among some of the other ethics issues as well. I will say Mohammed has not done an incredible job being the FIA president this year, which is disappointing. When it was announced he was going to come in to be the FIA president, I really thought things were going to go in the right direction. It doesn't seem like things have fully gone in the right direction since he's come in. So I really hope that regardless of what happens, whoever in the future does come in, I really hope that he can try to improve and do a better job going forward, because to me, it's disappointing to see that he's kind of involved with a lot of the major issues we've been seeing in Formula One. Was part of some decision-making, I think, for the TV deal that we'll talk about here just a little bit as well. Nonetheless, it's interesting stuff. He will continue being the FIA president, which isn't shocking and surprising. I do wish just someone better would have come in like Tim Mayer. I think Tim could have done a better job, but Mohammed will continue being the FIA president going forward and in the future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the 2025 United States Grand Prix. Now, early in the race, there was a little bit of contact, I think, between a couple drivers who got penalized. Carlos Sainz got taken out early in the race. But outside of that, there wasn't a lot that really happened in this event. Max Verstappen won the pole, took off with the lead early, and would dominate this race and win this race by nearly 10 seconds. Come off the corner, and I believe this is the third or fourth time that Max Verstappen has gone on to win the United States Grand Prix, and picks up, I believe, his 67th or 68th career Formula One win in his career. Max Verstappen, well-deserved. He is putting himself back up in this championship fight with how consistent he's been and how strong he's been throughout the second half of this year, especially since the McLarens don't look as strong as they have looked throughout this year. I think Max Verstappen actually has a shot to win the title. I think he's only 40 or 45 points behind the McLarens right now, and if they continue having the pace and speed that they're having at the moment, I think it's very likely that Max Verstappen has a great chance and opportunity to go out there and win a championship this year. And the McLarens are just fumbling. It doesn't seem like the McLarens are as strong as they've been. It seems like the Red Bull team has really figured out their stuff at the moment right now, and I think they're really starting to show that extremely consistent speed that they had. They didn't have as good a consistent speed early in the season, so I think for Max, it's pretty impressive seeing him go out there and win another championship. Not championship, but another race. Congrats to Max on picking up the win. He's ending the year on a really strong note. I'm excited to see where things can go for the 2026 year, especially with the team if he doesn't win the title. But once again, congratulations to Max on winning the United States Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas. And now we're going to head on to the next story as today's episode, as we're talking about Denny Hamlin. As reported by the NASCAR Insights account, I believe it was yesterday during the Cup Series race at Talladega Superspeedway, that Denny Hamlin, with him leading his 400th NASCAR Cup Series race, becomes only the 7th driver in NASCAR Cup history to lead 400 races in the NASCAR Cup Series. The other 6 drivers, I believe, are Darrell Waltrip, I believe Dale Earnhardt, Richard Petty, David Pearson, I believe Jeff Gordon, I believe Jimmy Johnson maybe also had 400 races, but I'm not entirely sure at this point. Denny Hamlin joins the list of the who of the best. When you lead 400 races in your career, I think that is absolutely an incredible accomplishment. Denny Hamlin is one of the best drivers in NASCAR Cup Series history. Even if Denny Hamlin does not win the championship this year, he deserves a lot of credit for what he has accomplished as a driver this year in particular. With 6 wins so far this year, already locking his way into the championship for putting together an unbelievable and great season, and just putting up some amazing numbers this year with the consistency, with the laps led, among other things. For Denny Hamlin to have 400 races led in his Cup career, I think that's an incredible accomplishment. I checked some other drivers. Kyle Larson's not even at 200 at this point, though I think Larson will get to 200 by next year. I think he's led 181 or 182 races. There's other drivers kind of getting up there at this point, I believe Brad Keselowski's kind of close to that number. Kyle Busch is also kind of close to that 400 number as well, I'm pretty sure. So we could see some other drivers join in. Nonetheless, so pretty impressive stuff and pretty incredible. Denny Hamlin joins the list of drivers with 400 races led. I think that's pretty impressive for Denny Hamlin. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Jack Crawford. As it was announced on Friday morning that Jack Crawford will do the FP1 test at Mexico this weekend, driving for Aston Martin. This is going to be the first time that Jack Crawford, I believe, has ever driven a car in Formula 1, as of course he does have a development contract and is a reserve driver currently at the moment for the Aston Martin team and organization. Jack Crawford, of course, comes from the United States, a driver who's been having a phenomenal year in Formula 2, has a really solid chance and opportunity to win the Formula 2 championship this year, and there's many people that think down the road he could be picked up by the TWG Global Group, the Cadillac team, and could eventually go over there in the future to be a reserve driver like Colton Herta is going to be next year. I think Jack's an extremely talented guy. I'd love to see him down the road replace Lance Stroll. Obviously, Lance Stroll is the son of the owner of the team, Lawrence Stroll, so that's probably going to be difficult to happen, but I would love to see Jack Crawford get the chance and opportunity to go to a better organization who I think will actually show a lot of respect to him going forward in the future. So nonetheless, I'm really excited to see this. I'm happy to see he'll get the chance and opportunity to run some FP1 tests. He deserves an opportunity to do the FP1 test with how strong and how solid he has been over the last year or so. He's been doing really good in Formula 2. Good to see he'll get the opportunity to do the FP1 test coming up very soon in Mexico, which will be happening, I believe, on Friday. Good to see he'll get the chance and opportunity to do that. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Truck Series race for next year at San Diego. As I believe it was reported by Jeff Gluck, Bob Pockrass, and other reporters in the industry, it sounds like that not a lot of fans are going to be allowed to attend the Truck Series race at San Diego. As a report, it sounds like only military families and residents of Coronado and on the base will be allowed in, and the people that are involved being on the base as well will be allowed in the Truck Series race on Friday. Now, the big reason for that, I believe it's Navy Day in the country, I'm pretty sure, which this race will be taking place on June 19th. I believe that's also Naval Base Day, I'm pretty sure, whatever that is, I can't remember exactly. But a lot of people are really disappointed to hear that they probably won't be able to go to the race. And while I do respect that, I actually don't really have a massive issue with this, especially since this is happening on a naval base, a military base in particular. I actually really am not fully against this move. 1,000%. Now, I think that some fans should be allowed to attend. I think that we should allow some in, but maybe a limited number of fans can be allowed in. I do think that this is not the worst decision that NASCAR has made. Trust me, I've seen worse decisions made in NASCAR than what we're seeing right here. This is not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's not as bad as like the Charlotte Rumble not allowing people into the middle of the day I believe on Friday or Saturday, I'm pretty sure, where people couldn't see the practice sessions for Xfinity and Cup. I think that was an issue that happened this year. So that's something that I wasn't the biggest fan of. I'm not 1,000% against it. I'm not 1,000,000% for this move, but I'm not 1,000% against this move. I think if you're on the military base, you should get the chance and opportunity to go see the race. And if you have a lot of fans coming in, those people in the military, especially when they have the day off for our national holiday, I don't have a massive issue with this. I don't 1,000,000% agree with it, but it's the point. But I think it's not the worst move I've seen from NASCAR. It's not the worst thing I've seen, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Casey Mears. Now, obviously, Casey Mears will run the Truck Series race this upcoming week in Martinsville, but Casey Mears, of course, competed in the NASCAR Cup Series race at Talladega, and there was a lot of people that were doubting Casey Mears at that point. But Casey Mears put together a pretty solid performance at Talladega Superspeedway and finished in 18th place. This actually is the highest finish for a Garage 66 or MBM Motorsports car since 2020, I believe back at either Daytona or the Summer Daytona race in 2020. I'm really happy to see Casey Mears having success. He has not raced in NASCAR for many, many starts. He's made about 3 or 4 Cup Series starts so far this year and hasn't made that many starts. He was last full time in 2016. So I'm happy to see him have some success. Obviously, Garage 66 does have some help from the Roush Yates engines, and we know the Roush Yates engine cars, the Fords, are always very, very good. But Casey Mears and spoke to the media after the race as well. He says his goal is still to get to 500 NASCAR Cup Series starts. He did speak, I believe it was Michael Massey from Front Stretch, and I think he did confirm that he is looking to run next year, I believe, around 6 Cup Series races, so he's working on that deal. If Garage 66 is around next year, I would expect there's a good chance Casey will be behind the wheel of that car for a few events, but I'm happy nonetheless to see that Casey will get the chance and opportunity to race next year once again. I'm also happy to see that he went out there and had a phenomenal run. He did a good job, was up in the lead pack at the end, went a lap down or 2 laps down at points because of mechanical issues, but he did a solid job overall, and I think Casey Mears deserves a lot of credit for putting together a pretty solid performance in the event. Glad to see Casey show some good stuff, show his old capabilities, and get a top 18, and hey, he beat all the Hendrick cars, so you can say that's a little bit of justice for him basically getting screwed from Hendrick, as some would say, but good for Casey to finish inside the top 20 at Talladega this past weekend. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Norm Benning. Now, Norm Benning, unfortunately, was involved in a little bit of a scary incident and crash, an incident that took place at Talladega during the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series event that ended up taking place. Norm Benning was running, I believe, inside of the lead pack, or might have been a lap down at that point. I don't entirely remember, but his truck unfortunately caught on fire with around 20 laps to go in the race, and he unfortunately had to stop the truck at that point. Now, Norm Benning did say that the engine costs around $75,000, so he's hoping to have that truck repaired and the engine repaired hopefully by the time we get back to Daytona next year, because he's expected to run the Daytona race in 2026 at this point. Now, Norm Benning said he was fine. Obviously, a lot of people are really, really concerned on the radio. There's a lot of drivers who have a lot of respect for Norm, from what a lot of people that said they were really concerned about Norm Benning at that point. Norm Benning did get out of the truck. Obviously, someone who is up in that age, around 73 or 74 years old, probably should not be inhaling a ton of smoke, so I'm glad to see that Norm was okay after that. And he also did confirm as well that he will be running the Truck Series race this upcoming weekend at Martinsville. So if you're wanting to see Norm once again, You'll get that chance and opportunity next weekend in Martinsville. Thank God Norm was okay after that. That was a very scary situation. We saw almost a very similar thing happen to AJ Allmendinger when his car caught on fire during the Cup Series race. I'm glad to see everyone was okay after their instance in that situation. But for Norm, I'm glad to see he also run the Truck Series race in Martinsville. Glad to see it wasn't a more scary situation. It was a scary situation. Glad to see Norm was okay after what happened right there. And also, again, very happy nonetheless see that Norm will get the chance and opportunity to run the Truck Series race at Martinsville this upcoming week, this Friday. I think maybe he'll have a decent truck and put together a good performance. Maybe people will help him. Who knows at this point? But glad to see Norm was okay. And again, happy to see he'll run the Truck Series race this weekend at Martinsville. Looking forward to see what he can do this upcoming event. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Connor Zilisch. Now, after Connor Zilisch has had 18 straight races scoring a top 5 finish in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, the longest streak in NASCAR Xfinity Series history, with him finishing outside the top 20, I believe finishing around 23rd or 24th in the race in the Xfinity event at Talladega. Unfortunately, his top 5 streak has come to an end. Sadly, he got caught up in a couple incidents throughout the day. He got caught up in one of the big wrecks when Connor Mosek got turned by Harrison Burton, who had already had damage in the first big wreck. He was actually back on the lead lap, though, and in the lead pack, and then unfortunately, with around 30 laps to go in the race, Connor Zilisch sadly had a flat tire, hit the outside wall. It would go multiple laps down. He was 1 lap down, then he got a penalty, I believe, for too many men over the wall, I'm pretty sure, trying to fix the truck, and got another lap penalty and would go 2 or 3 laps down by the end of the event, finishing in 23rd. The good news is for Connor Zilisch, he is locked in the championship 4 because of how strong he has been in the season so far. And even though the streak is officially over, I think it's phenomenal what Connor Zilisch was able to accomplish this year with that extremely incredible consistent streak. To have 18 straight races of finishing inside the top 5. To go from the Talladega race where he got injured and you had that crash to this race where unfortunately his streak comes to an end. I think it still is phenomenal what Connor Zilisch has been able to accomplish this year. And just based off of how Connor has been this year and his consistent streak here, he without question deserves the championship. And it would be definitely disappointing if with how good Connor Zilisch has been this year, it would definitely be very incredibly unfortunate if Connor Zilisch is not able to go out there and win the championship this year. He deserves it this year. He's been phenomenal. He has been incredible. And again, it would be definitely disappointing. I would definitely be a little upset if he doesn't win the championship this year based off of how strong and how good he has been in the 2025 season. But to have his streak come in Talladega, it is disappointing, but I think he deserves a lot of respect for what he's been able to accomplish this year. Congrats on an amazing season for Connor Zilisch. He's got 2 races left. Try to go win Martinsville this week. I think he's got a good chance to win Martinsville. It's a shame the streak is officially over, but he put together a good season for sure, and I wish the streak could have continued. He had a shot to continue that streak. The streak is over, but he did a very solid job, put together some strong performances, and did a pretty good job on the racetrack this year. 18 consecutive top 5s, I think, is absolutely incredible. And now we're going to head to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about William Sawalich. Now, William Sawalich was involved in that big wreck that I believe that Connor Zilisch was involved in going into turn number 1, and William Sawalich would hit the outside wall really, really hard. Now, unfortunately for William Sawalich, he was transferred to a local hospital after hitting the outside wall very, very hard, and we really didn't get any updates on William Sawalich until late last night or early morning around 2 a.m. on Sunday. The team did confirm that William Sawalich has been released from the hospital. He got transferred to the hospital after the race and has been officially released from the hospital at this time. William did release a statement also yesterday, I believe, before the Cup Series race kicked off. He said he's very thankful for all the messages and thanks for the messages that everyone he has sent. He says he's a little sore after the race, but he is feeling fine. He says, and I think he also confirmed that he should be good to go at Martinsville as well. Now, obviously, I would expect that he'll probably have a checkup coming up, and that will basically be a determination if he'll be cleared to run Martinsville. I don't believe he's been officially cleared to run Martinsville at this point, but after seeing the incident with William, I'm glad to see William was okay, because that was a very scary crash and a very scary wreck that took place for William right there, and you don't want to see drivers get hurt in these situations, and I think that they were doing it as a precautionary thing, which again, I think being cautious, especially when a driver hits the outside wall really hard, I think that's a very important thing. We want to see people be safe, and we want to see the safety crew do their job correctly. So I am glad to see that it seems like for the most part he's okay. I'm not again, we have to wait and see if he will be officially cleared to run this upcoming week at Martinsville. Again, I would think he'll be cleared to run Martinsville, but we're not entirely sure if they will be cleared. We'll have to wait and see. Martinsville is not as tough, is not as dangerous as like Talladega is, for example. So I would expect he'll probably be cleared to run. We'll have to wait and see. There could be standby drivers on loan. Who knows at this point? Nonetheless, we'll have to wait and see if he does get cleared to run, but I'm happy to see that he was released in the hospital. Good to see he's been cleared to go home. We'll see what happens, so in regards to if he will do, in the fact, be cleared to run the race coming up very, very soon at Martinsville. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Eric Almirola. Now, Eric Almirola was also involved in a very scary crash that took place with around 2 laps to go in the race at Talladega Superspeedway. Eric Almirola had a pretty fast car throughout the day, running inside the top 5 and top 10, and also leading laps throughout the day as well. But going down the backstretch with 2 laps to go, Sammy Siff tried to make a really aggressive move through the middle of Eric Almirola, and I believe it was either Jesse Love or Austin Hill. I can't remember exactly at that point, but he tried to make a move to try to get to the front as he was pretty much in a must-win situation with the consistency of their drivers, and unfortunately, he would actually turn Eric Almirola really hard into the outside wall. Eric Almirola would hit the outside wall a ton, destroy the front clip of the car, destroy the car in general, and Daniel Dye also hit the inside wall really hard. Now, Eric Almirola did speak to the media, including Bob Pockrass, and he says that his foot is bruised, but he says he'll be okay and fine for Martinsville. First thing, I'm glad to see Eric Almirola was okay after that crash. I get that there are some fans aren't the biggest fans of Eric Almirola, but again, the most important thing is a driver safety, and I think driver safety has to be taken absolutely as the number one priority at this point. I'm glad to see it was only a bruised foot at worst. It could have been a way scarier crash. Thank God for the safety, especially the Xfinity cars. The safety has definitely improved a lot with these cars, and I think that is something that should not be taken lightly, or a lot of credit needs to go to NASCAR in that part for the safety, because some of the wrecks we saw over the weekend in the Truck Series race, the Cup Series race, the Xfinity race in particular, we saw a lot of big wrecks and a lot of scary incidents. So to see that a lot of drivers didn't get seriously hurt this weekend is absolutely a major testament to where we have gone as an industry and how we've done as a sport to work on the safety side of things. So again, I'm very happy to see that Eric Almirola will be running this weekend in Martinsville. He's got a really good shot to win the Xfinity race. He won the fall race last year. In fact, he swept last year at Martinsville. Has had 3 wins so far, looking for 4 wins. But could try to become only the 3rd driver to have 4 or more wins this year. The other 2 that have 4 or more wins are Austin Hill and Connor Silage. Austin, of course, not competing for championship this year. But good to see that Eric Almirola was okay after the incident and crash. And I think he'll be good to go. The race this weekend, we'll see how things go for him, and we'll see if he can form. I would expect Almirola to have a chance and an opportunity. He's got a bruise, so he should be good to go, and he should be able to race this weekend at Martinsville, which I think he's got a really good chance to win this weekend at Martinsville in the Xfinity Series race. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Fox once again. Now, if you have watched my channel a lot, you have probably seen that I have been extremely critical of the Fox NASCAR broadcast really for the last couple of years. And this past weekend's Truck Series race at Talladega Superspeedway was absolutely no exception. The broadcast from the start, especially from the qualifying broadcast, I had a really bad feeling because there were so many commercials during the qualifying broadcast. But that was on FS2, so I'll cut them a tiny bit of slack there. But they were doing a really bad job there. You could definitely tell from the beginning that something is off with the energy in the booth. Number one, like it's been for pretty much every single race outside of Charlotte since the second half of the year, they have not been showing up to the racetrack. Now, I did some Googling how far Talladega is away from Charlotte. It's like 5 hours away. They could have traveled to the race. And I don't understand what's the deal with this. And the Xfinity Series had the same issue as well, where they're having these remote booths, especially end of the year. I think you need to be showing up to the racetrack, especially this late in the year. And especially at a super speedway race, from crying out loud, you need to show up to the track. But Fox's broadcast, there is just no cohesiveness, and there's just no energy in the booth. The only person in the booth that did anything remotely good was Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski actually, at the end, showed some emotion. At the end of these races, there needs to be emotion with the calls. Jamie Little just calls it so nonchalantly. She doesn't call it with any emotion, and I've said this so many times. Jamie Little is a fantastic pit reporter, one of the top pit reporters we have seen in the last 20 years. She is not a good lead commentator, not a great lead play-by-play announcer. You need someone that's going to command excellence in that booth. That's what someone like Eric Brennan does. That's what someone like Rick Allen does. Adam Alexander does. Listen to the emotion of like Lee Diffie at the end of that race at Talladega. Listen to the emotion after the Xfinity Series race at Talladega at the end of that event. There was more emotion coming to the checker flag of the races there. And I'm frustrated as hell how bad Fox has gone. Also, Michael Waltrip should have been out of the booth years ago. He used to be a good color commentator. He is now not a good one in the booth. There has to be changes done to Fox, and I really hope in the future, there were rumors about him being sold to another network. It needs to happen because Fox's coverage has been atrocious. They even went to commercial while Gio Ruggiero, who picked up his first career win, they wait until they come back from commercial. They missed the burnout, for crying out loud. It's frustrating watching truck broadcasts with Fox. The broadcasts have been unwatchable this year. They've been terrible, and that's a big reason why the truck ratings have been down, because it's terrible coverage. It's not very good, and I think it's very unwatchable with how bad it has been. And I don't know if it's going to get better. Things need to change with the Fox broadcast going forward. I don't know if they'll change till the future at this point, but there absolutely need to be more changes made to the truck broadcast going forward. I hope it changes because I think the broadcast was just unwatchable this year at Talladega. It was not good, and it was a terrible broadcast, and it was a bad broadcast in general for Fox, like it's been a lot this year in 2025. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ty Dillon. Now, we have a couple Ty Dillon stories to talk about today on the channel, but we're first going to begin with talking about the new incident that took place on pit road with Ty Dillon. So Ty Dillon wasn't having the best of days to begin with, was running in the mid to back of the pack a lot of the day, but coming off of pit road, I believe at the start of stage number 3, Ty Dillon would hit a tire while they were working on Josh Berry's car. He would drive into into Josh Berry's pit box, would hit that tire on the right rear. You could tell that Ty Dillon's pit crew member was not very happy, justifiably so, as they were working on his car. And Ty Dillon then went on the radio, and the team went on the radio, and they were going ahead and trying to blame the 21 team who was in their pit box at that point. Bozy Tatarevic, I think, summed it up very, very well. I think that was completely uncalled for and completely unnecessary from Ty Dillon and the 10 team in general. And I cannot believe that they were going out there and trying to blame the 21 team who's clearly out on pit road working on the car. You're telling me that that is on the 21 team, 10. You guys have plenty of space to get out of pit road. It's not their fault that you guys have a driver who's for 2 weeks in a row caused incidents on the racetrack. And that is extremely dangerous. I mean, what happens if that 21 pit crew member who's working on the towing to try to fix the gear issues on the car, what happens if that tire gets jammed and hurts one of the pit crew members because your driver can't use his head? I don't think of Ty Dillon being a driver that is a hothead. But that was completely uncalled for and unnecessary from Ty Dillon. And I think he should be called out for this. And I think the 10 team, the communication needs to be looked at. Who are we going to blame this time? Are we going to blame the spotter? You fired the spotter and brought him down to the track and you fired him. Are we going to blame the spotter this time? We're going to blame Frank Diney Jr. and are we going to fire him and move TJ Bell away from AJ Allmendinger? Because we know TJ is supposed to work with AJ next year. Are we going to do that? I mean, it is mind-blowing to me how Ty Dillon for 2 weeks now has been causing incidents and causing issues and making dumb himself look worse by the minute with dumb and bad decisions, which isn't shocking and surprising with Ty Dillon because he's done some pretty stupid stuff in the past. But this is another level of just being stupid and uncalled for moves. Completely unnecessary on his part. Completely dumb move, in my opinion, to cause another incident like that. It's disappointing to see him cause another one. I'm not shocked, though, and I'm glad to see a lot of people calling him out for it. I think it was unnecessary and called for Ty Dillon, in my opinion, to do that on pit road. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about William Byron. Now, we talked about the new Ty Dillon incident from Talladega Superspeedway, but we're going back to last week at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. So William Byron had a really good chance to win the race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, was in contention to pick up the win, got passed by Kyle Larson with a few laps prior to this incident, but Ty Dillon would try to come down pit road, and William Byron had nowhere to go and ran into Ty Dillon, destroying both their cars and putting William Byron in the position now where he has to go to this weekend's race at Martinsville looking to pick up the win and victory, which he would have been in a great position to lock his way in the championship for with either a win or a great finish at Las Vegas. Now, William Byron spoke to the media this past weekend at Talladega Superspeedway before the race happened on Sunday, where he got turned by Carson Osbar after a lot of late pushes, and he says he doesn't feel like he could have done anything different in that situation with Ty Dillon and doesn't feel like he is at fault for the situation. I completely agree with William Byron here. Like I mentioned with the other Ty Dillon incident, I cannot believe that Chris Rice and a lot of the people from Call It Racing were trying to blame William Byron for the incident that happened there at Las Vegas. I think that is all 100% on Ty Dillon and the 10 team. Because even if you have spotter communication and they're saying there was lies about the spotter communication and other things, well, the spotter got fired, so I'm going to blame the spotter somewhat on that situation with coming to pit road. But even then, Ty Dillon should have waved his hand out the window. And apparently it's like, I think we've been in the Cup Series long enough where I really shouldn't have to wave my window. I'm pretty sure waving your hand out the window is the courtesy move, Ty. I think that's simply one of the most courteous things you can do on the racetrack. And the fact that you did not put out your hand out the window was definitely disappointing to see, and you should have 100% put your hand out the window. And because of that, we have the situation, of course, the championship format, which, trust me, we're going to talk about that here in just a short little bit. But I think for William Byron, I do feel for him at this point because now William Byron's in a bad position with instances that he truly did not fully cause on his own, in my opinion. I think that he deserved a lot of credit for keeping his composure in this situation. But Ty Dillon, that's 2 weeks now where Ty Dillon has caused incidents on the track. Is Ty Dillon going to cause a trifecta? We know he can kind of make bad moves at Martinsville too. I understand William Byron's frustration. I think he has the right to be pissed and frustrated about what happened there at Las Vegas. It was a pretty bonehead move what happened there, in my opinion, and I think it was kind of uncalled for with some of the stuff that we saw there, and I think Ty Dillon just made a terrible move, in my opinion, at Las Vegas last week. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about J.J. Yeley. Now, J.J. Yeley had a pretty solid run going at Talladega Superspeedway in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race as he got his first really good shot in a very long time in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, driving a 7 truck for Spire Motorsports. He was up front a lot of the day, running inside the top 5 and top 10 quite a bit in the event. Unfortunately, was in the bottom lane near the end of the race, and once you're on the bottom lane, with how hard it is to pass, especially with these trucks, you're in a really tough position to go out there and pick up a win. He tried to make some moves at the end, but I believe it fade outside the top 10 and finished, I believe, around 11th or 12th position in the race. Now, J.J. Yeley does blame himself. He says he didn't do a very good job at the end of that race, which I completely disagree. I think J.J. Yeley, for what he had to go through, I think he did a really solid and a really good job in this race. And there's a lot of people that, and he got asked a question about if he'd like to do more races with Spire Motorsports in the future in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, and he says he absolutely be down to make more starts with Spire Motorsports in the future. I said this on X, and I'm going to reiterate this here. J.J. Yeley has been getting better as a driver and is a very competent driver behind the wheel nowadays. He is a much better driver and a much better NASCAR driver now than when he was at Joe Gibbs Racing when he started around 2004 to 2007. J.J. Yeley needed a few more years before he went to Cup, in my opinion, because I think you look at him now, he is a much more complete driver. He's more aware. He does a really good job behind the wheel, and I would love to see him full-time with Spire Motorsports in the Truck Series next year. I think legitimately, J.J. Yeley could be a legit championship contender if he's full-time with an organization. Now, he is a much more competent, a much better driver nowadays, and does a pretty good job keeping his nose clean, putting together really strong, great performances on a week-by-week basis, and it's a shame to see that after things kind of fell through with the situation with Joe Gibbs Racing in the mid-2000s or the late 2000s, they never got a great opportunity. But he did a good job when he's given a good opportunity, and I think he deserves another good chance and opportunity racing in a sport. So I really hope that he does get that chance and opportunity. I really hope we do get to see him running the sport in the future once again. I think he's earned the right opportunity to get a second chance with a good organization. It'd be great to see him join up with Spire Motorsports full-time. If not, get some select starts with Spire to see what he can do. I hope he does get that chance in the future, as I think he's a talented guy. He's done a pretty good job in that event. I hope he gets more opportunities because I think he did a pretty good job with the 7 truck at Talladega, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jim Pullman. Now, it was announced this past week, I believe on Tuesday or Wednesday, that Jim Pullman will be Kyle Busch's crew chief in the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season. And there's a lot of people that were skeptical and some people that were happy about the move. Now, Kyle Busch actually spoke on the hiring of Jim Pullman for 2026. He says that Jim Pullman's personality and his leadership is a big reason why he brought Jim Pullman onto the team. And he thinks that Jim Pullman will be a really good leader for the team. Him and Austin Dillon kind of reiterated the same thing throughout the week. And they said that the leadership is one thing that Rich Cholos Racing is currently lacking at this point. Seemed like a little bit of a call out against Richard Cholos, the owner of the team and organization at this point. Now, Jim Pullman being hired by RCR, I think some people are definitely skeptical of this move. I actually like this move because I did some digging on this, and Jim Pullman actually has worked at Richard Cholos Racing before. in the early 2020s. He was actually a major asset to help and develop the next-gen car, and I believe was a shop and floor manager for RCR in the early 2020s. He also does have some next-gen experience being the crew chief for Austin Hill in the Cup Series at Michigan, and guess what? He finished inside the top 20 in that event. And you think about the early success with the next-gen, with guys like Tyler Reddick, who won 3 races and then got the opportunity in 2011. Austin Dillon got a win and was pretty competitive in the 2022 season. I have a little more faith that we are going to see improvement from Kyle Busch. Hearing the things we hear about Jim Pullman, I actually like Jim Pullman being the crew chief, and obviously we know that Kyle Busch is going to be in a contract year 2026 and could be a free agent at the end of the year. They needed to bring someone in who is going to help the program get better, and I do have confidence that Jim Pullman can go into this year, and next year I should say, and get the team in a better position going forward. So I'm really excited to see how Jim Pullman is going to do as a crew chief with the team next year. Again, I have full faith and confidence that Kyle Busch will at least have a better year. Will it convince him to stay at RCR in 2027? Who knows at this point? There may not be a lot. There's going to be a lot of rides that are going to be open after this year, but I do have confidence and faith that we'll see some good stuff come out from this, and I'm excited to see how things will go in the 2026 season for Kyle. Again, I have some faith that we'll see some improvement from Kyle Busch next year, and I have confidence that we'll see a pretty good season from Kyle, hopefully. I think Jim Pullman's a good guy, and he deserves the opportunity to be the crew chief for Kyle. I think he'll do a pretty good job in the 2026 NASCAR Cup season being the crew chief of the team, as I think he'll help the team, and he's a big reason why Junior Motorsports also shown improvement this year and had a great season in Xfinity competition. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Apple TV, as it was officially announced and confirmed on Friday morning that Formula One will be headed to Apple TV in the 2026 season. It is, according to the deal, it is a 5-year deal, and each year Apple will be paying $150 million, which will be a total of $750 million for the whole deal for 5 years. This is more than ESPN had been paying for that, and ABC. To have the deal, they had around a $90 million each year, so they're paying $450 million for each year of their deal. I think they had a 5-year deal initially, or 2 or 3 year deal initially. Then, of course, they were paying that much throughout the whole year annually. Obviously, Formula One was looking for more money for their upcoming years, and they wanted a brand that could spend a lot of money. Obviously, with Apple developing the Formula One movie, they became the favorite to pick up the TV deal and TV contract for the 2026 year, and now it's official that they will have the deal starting in the 2026 season. Honestly, I think this is not a good move for Formula One. On the money side of things, it makes sense to go ahead and take the money. If you want to get money and get a lot of money, to have the opportunity to have that, you take the money and you run with it at that point. But Formula One is making a lot of the same mistakes and a lot of the bad moves that NASCAR made in the 2000s. This feels very similar to what NASCAR's done. And it's not just the TV deal. It's all the gimmicks that we've been seeing. The sprint races, the reverse grids. They're talking about having reverse grids going forward into Formula One. Stefano Domenicali has talked about having shorter races, which I think a lot of that is attributed to the fact that people watch your highlights, because let's be real, Stefano, your racing product just isn't good right now. Formula One does not put on a good show and doesn't put on a good racing product. That's why you're getting races where people aren't tuning in all the way, and shortening the races isn't the problem. I'm just going to say that. Formula One, in my opinion, though, I think their chance of keeping up with NASCAR, I think that's over with. They're not going to get good viewership. Look at some of the stuff with the MLS and MLB. They do not publish any other ratings for those games. That should tell you everything you need to know. And we have seen a viewership go up for MLB. And they don't publish the stuff for Apple. So that should tell you everything you need to know. I know that Apple TV does have 45 million plus subscribers that are going to be integrating it. I just think this is a bad move for the growth of Formula One in the United States. I think this is going to come back to haunt him and bite him, and I think this is a really bad move in general. But they took the money and ran. And yeah, you want to go for the money and all that stuff, and I completely respect and understand that money's important to Formula One at this point right now. But I think legitimately, this is not the best move for Formula One to get a lot of people to tune in. They're probably going to get less viewers going into the 2026 year. Yes, they're going to have an American team, of course, with the Cadillac team coming in. But I think legitimately, this is not the best move for the team. And for Formula One, I think they're going to lose a lot of fans. It's a bad move and a terrible move from Formula One to go over to Apple TV. Not the best move for them, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Connor Zilisch. As it was reported, I believe, by Jeff Gluck, that Connor Zilisch will not run the Supercar finale at Adelaide at the end of this year. There have been rumors, speculation over the course of the last couple of weeks that Connor Zolch have been working on a deal, and Lee Diffie was, of course, on Dorp Bumper Clear, I believe, this past week, and he has said that they were, of course, working on a deal for Connor Zolch to run the race at Adelaide, like Austin Cindric is going to be running with the Ford Tickford Racing Organization at the end of this year. They were trying to work on a deal for him to get the chance and opportunity to run that event, but Connor Zolch said the big reason why he will not be running the event is because of AAA engineering switch from Chevrolet to Ford. AAA, of course, will be switching their brands to Ford. A lot of the Red Bull groups are switching over to Ford. Of course, the Red Bull Formula One team is going from Honda to Ford-powered the Cosworth engines in the 2026 season, and the same thing's happening for a lot of the Red Bull stuff for 2026. This is really disappointing here, and it's disappointing. This is now the third driver that's been confirmed now from the Chevrolet camp that will not get the chance and opportunity to run the top level. Now, Jesse Love, we'll talk about here a little bit. Jesse Love did confirm that he will be running this. I believe he's going to be running the secondary class in the Super 2 Series, I'm pretty sure. So expect Jesse Love to go to that event event at the end of the year. But I really wish Connor got the chance and opportunity. But again, like I mentioned, this is now the third driver who will not get the chance. Obviously, there was talk of Kyle Busch doing it for the last couple of years. He turned down that opportunity because of Erebus, and a lot of things in a fall between Erebus and, of course, RCR, I'm pretty sure. And then, of course, they think about this year as well. Kyle Larson was very close that Larson was going to drive for the top Chevrolet team. Kyle Larson, now we know for sure, will not be running that event at the end of the year. It was actually very close to being announced with how the Indy 500 went this year. That was a pretty big reason why he decided not to go ahead and run that. And then, of course, now you have Connor Zolch, who was very close to doing that. And I think if there's any driver who could actually go in and be successful with it, I think Connor Zolch would have been that guy who could have absolutely 100% been extremely successful with running the supercar event right there. Maybe not going out there win because guys like Will Brown, Brock Feeney, and Cam Waters are all going to be really tough. And your Chaz Mostert, among other guys, are going to be really, really good. But it's disappointing to see that, and I get the reason behind why they're not doing it. I'm just disappointed to see that we will not see Connor Zolch get the chance and opportunity to run the supercar finale at the end of the year. I think he would have done a pretty good and really solid job in general, and I think it's disappointing to see he won't be running it this year. Again, I think there's some high expectations that Connor could have done a good job. I think he legitimately could have done a solid job, and I'm disappointed to see that he will not be running with the teams at the end of the year and will not run the supercar finale. Adelaide, disappointing stuff, and disappointing that he will not get to run it this year. So I think he legitimately could have been a factor and contender at Adelaide this year. And now we're going to head on to the next story in today's episode as we're talking about the championship and the championship format once again. Now, over the weekend, we have once again continued to hear a lot of things around the championship and legitimacy of the championship format. Let's first begin by talking about Joey Logano's comments on the championship. Now, Joey Logano has been defending this championship in this playoff format a lot over the course of the last couple weeks because there continues to be a lot of rumors and speculation around a change to the championship. Joey Logano, of course, wants to defend the championship as much as he has, and I can't blame Logano for wanting to defend the championship format because Logano, of course, had a ton of success with this championship format. But Joey Logano had some comments. He basically said that he smiles throughout it, and people don't like that he smiles. And Logano basically said he tells drivers, like, you get the chance and opportunity to race in these cars every week, and you shouldn't really have a reason to complain about being behind the wheel of a race car. When I heard those comments from Joey Logano, I just thought that comes off as someone being incredibly, a little bit arrogant, in my opinion, because Logano, people don't like this championship because they don't feel like you fully deserve the championship last year. Now, Logano won under the format that he won under. There's no denying that. But Joey Logano, without question, was not the most deserving driver last year. Yes, he had 4 wins last year, but Logano had the least amount of top 5s and least amount of top 10s for a champion. And Joey Logano ran in the middle of the pack. If not for a bunch of overtimes at Nashville, Joey Logano doesn't even make the playoffs in the first place. So I don't agree with Joey Logano's comments about not liking your job and basically being upset about things. You can love your job, but also at the same time not agree with everything around it. I think Logano's kind of missing a point what a lot of people have been saying about the championship, and a lot of drivers aren't the biggest fan of the championship. Joey Logano's been able to benefit off the championship, so I can't discredit him for liking the championship the way he does. But at the same token, same time, I think for Joey Logano to sit here and basically say what he said about it and defend his championship as much as he has, he's had a lot of people who don't like it. Dale Jr.'s not the biggest fan of it, and I think Logano's kind of happy-go look that he's been doing. A lot of people aren't the biggest fan of it because they can kind of see through the facade at that point. Now, obviously, there's also been some rumors around the championship. The Daily Downforce put out a rumor that there's potentially possibly that the 10-race chase could come back in 2026. They have put the rumor thing, so it's not official that that is going to happen at the moment, but there is a chance and possibly that could end up happening. And according to them, it sounds like an announcement could come sometime after the championship race at Phoenix. If that actually is the format that we're using, it's not the best format. I still think the 36 race format is the best way to go about it when it comes to the championship format. But if that is the championship format that we do in fact decide to go with for 2026, I would actually not be fully against it. I actually wasn't fully against the 10-race chase because, number one, you have a bigger sample size compared to like what we have now. You'll have 10 races, so while you still have a pretty big size regular season, you'll still have 10 races. One of the biggest issues we have seen with this current playoff format at the moment is there isn't a big enough sample size for the championship format right now. A one-race championship isn't it. There's been rumors about a change to the format, and I think a 10-race chase would at least fix some of the problems. It wouldn't fix all the issues because you still have eliminations going on, but you would only have one elimination thing for all the other guys that don't make the postseason, and I think you have to have playoff points if you do continue doing this format. But I think Brad Keselowski also summed it up quite a bit the best way possible as well about the championship. He basically said that we used to have, I think it was something around the lines, if you still have races that kind of connected to a championship, well, you had the championship that was back then, the races that connect to a championship now, while back then, and with the full season, you had every race that kind of felt bigger. It feels like races are not as big as they used to be because of this current championship format, and basically, you had races that were connected to it. Now you have races connected to a championship. Well, you had races then that were its own big event, and then you didn't have races that were 1,000% connected to a championship. And Brad is 100% on point. Races nowadays, they don't feel as big as they used to. Think about the Daytona 500. Think about Southern 500. Those are massive events that you want to go out and win. Drivers would want to go win specific races to have a ton of success. Now if you pick up a win and you pick up a victory, guess what? You pick up a win, you're in the championship, you're competing for a championship. And now these races don't feel bigger. That's why we talk about the Harrison Burns situation. Harrison Burton's first career win, for example, last year, we should have been talking about how big of a win it is for Harrison Burton to pick up a win in the NASCAR Cup Series. You know what we're instead talking about? We're talking about the championship format. Last year at Kansas, Ross Chastain picks up the win. We're not talking about how big a win is for Ross Chastain. Marty Snyder, the first question he asked him is about the playoffs. We focus so much on these playoffs every single week that you don't create the storylines. You don't create those big storylines that everyone's really looking for at this point. And you have a lot of people that just get frustrated with the championship. Now, Brad reiterated that we probably should stop focusing on talking about the championship and focus more on waiting for next year, which unfortunately, Brad, I think that ship has sailed at this point considering how much we've talked about the championship format. But I think the championship format, there's so much question around it, and I really hope we do get changes to the championship format because right now I think this championship format is not the way to go about it at this point. I think there have to be changes to the championship format going into next year. I hope those changes do in fact come, and I hope it would be cool if it is a 10-race chase. I think a full season format is still the way to go because you had every race that felt big, it felt important, and now they don't feel as big and they don't feel as important as they used to be. So I really hope we do get those changes to the championship format going forward in the future. I hope it happens because I think it'd be better for the sport if we went to a full season championship instead of running to a playoff championship, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're doing a little bit of a silly season roundup for 2026. Now, over the weekend, there were some reports and some confirmations for the 2026 season on the driver lineups that were confirmed over the weekend. First, beginning from something that was reported by the Daily Downforce. They are reporting that Chandler Smith is expected to return to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series with Spire Motorsports in the 2026 season and continue driving a number 38 car. We already had confirmation pretty much that Lane Riggs will be back in the number 34 truck for 2026, but with how many times Chandler Smith has moved teams over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, we were not entirely sure if Chandler Smith would be returning to front row next year. Again, it's expected he'll return to front row. I actually like this move. I think Chandler Smith, yes, he did not make it out of the round of 10 this year, but I think he's been one of the 3 or 4 best guys all year so far on the consistency front. He's had a really strong year and a great resurgence after kind of unfortunately losing his ride with Joe Gibbs Racing at the end of last year. I think he needs someone in this series who's had a ton of success and is going to probably potentially fill that place of Corey Heim, who likely will not be full-time in the 2026 season. I think Chandler Smith has done a pretty good job this year with front row, showing some really good stuff. I really like this move, and I think this is a great move for Chandler Smith to continue being with front row next year. I would probably expect an announcement in the near future on this officially, but it sounds like Chandler will be back with front row next year. Next, let's talk about Justin Allgaier. There's been some questions because of Tim Pullman moving over to work with Kyle Busch next year. There was some talk about Justin Allgaier. I wonder if he'd be back with Junior Motorsports. Justin Allgaier did confirm over the weekend, speaking to the media, that he will be back with the team in 2026. Doesn't surprise me. Justin Allgaier has been with Junior Motorsports now for over a decade. This will be his 11th season with Junior Motorsports in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Has put together a really strong year this year with 3 wins so far this year. Been the only guy this year for the most part that has kept up with Connor Zolch, and he'll be looking to win his second or potentially third championship in the last years, depending on what happens at Phoenix this year. I think Justin Allgaier is a great driver, put together a great year with the organization, and deserves a lot of credit for how he's just been getting better even in Xfinity. He's chasing 30 wins at this point in Xfinity competition. There's only like 5 or 6 guys in Xfinity history who've ever reached that, and I think he's got a really good shot of getting to 30 at this point. I think it's well-deserved. He'll be back with the team next year and put together a really, really good season. And now we jump to the 2 big ones. First one revolves around Jesse Love. There were rumors earlier this year about Jesse Love potentially leaving Richard Childress Racing to go to Legacy Motor Club for the 2026 season and go back into the Toyota program. Well, Jesse Love did confirm over the weekend at Talladega that he will be back with Richard Childress Racing in the 2026 NASCAR Xfinity Series season and will continue driving a number 2 car next year. This move is a really good move for Jesse Love. Obviously, I've talked about this. I think Jesse Love is a really, really talented guy who always puts together really strong and great races on a week-by-week basis and has been really good this year and will likely make the championship 4. But I don't feel like Jesse Love at this point is fully ready to go full-time in the NASCAR Cup Series at this point. I think another year in Xfinity is not a bad deal. But he did also say that he does want to run more Cup Series races in the 2026 season, which I do agree with this move personally. I think Jesse Love, because I think he did show some flashes of points in Cup, but he wasn't amazing in the Cup Series. He had 1 or 2 good qualifying runs, but I think that 33 car has been out to lunch a lot this year. Yes, Austin Hill had a really good run at Talladega this past weekend, Cup along with the Xfinity Series event, but I think that Jesse Love has put together a really strong season. Now, what does this mean for Jesse Love after 2026? If Legacy does get their 3rd car for 27, because there's going to be a lot of silly season movement that is happening for the 2027 year, I would have to think he'll be the favorite to go over there in 27 because Jimmy Johnson is extremely interested in Jesse Love from what I know. And I think Jesse Love does at that point, if he continues to get better, I think then at that point he would deserve a chance and opportunity to go full-time racing in the NASCAR Cup Series in the future. But I think making select starts, that is a really good decision in my opinion. I don't think he's fully ready for Cup Series ride, and I think this is a good move. Plus, Jesse Love, in my opinion, has had a pretty good year in Xfinity, and it's going to keep some of that stability for the Xfinity Series because you're losing Connor Zilisch full-time next year. You're potentially losing Carson Quaffle, too, who may not even be full-time next year, with rumors he may only be running 2/3 the season with Junior Motorsports, still looking for a ride. You still got some questions around guys like Harrison Burton, even now Christian Eck, as rumors have circulated around him as a racing, maybe going back down the Craftsman Truck Series with Colin, and there's other drivers that could be on the move going into next year, too. So I think keeping that stability and keeping Jesse Love in the Xfinity Series, I think that's a good decision. Makes a ton of sense in my opinion. I really like this move of keeping Jesse Love in the Xfinity Series next year. And finally, the last big one. We've talked about this a lot on the channel. There's been a lot of speculation about Daniel Suarez going over to Spire Motorsports full-time in the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season, but those were just rumors at the time. Well, Jordan Bianchi has confirmed, and he talked about us on the teardown last night, but Daniel Suarez is expected, an announcement is coming very soon on this according to him. Daniel Suarez is expected to go to Spire Motorsports in the NASCAR Cup Series in the 2026 season and take over the number 7 car from Justin Haley. This, of course, like I mentioned, has been rumored many times over the course of the last few weeks that Daniel Suarez has been the lead candidate and has been the favorite to take over the number 7 car in 2026 after, like I said, last Tuesday or last Thursday it was confirmed that Haley would not be returned to the program in 2026. We're still waiting on some stuff around Justin Haley for the 2026 season. I haven't heard anything officially at this point for what Haley is going to do at this point. Maybe he goes to the College Xfinity program. That could be a potential possibility, though. He may not be in the plans for the team. But Daniel Suarez going to the 7. Is Daniel Suarez going to be an upgrade over Justin Haley? Maybe a little bit on a couple areas. I think popularity-wise, Daniel Suarez is a more popular driver than Justin Haley. Daniel Suarez also brings more sponsorship and funding than Justin Haley does. And when you look at someone that probably makes you feel something, Justin Haley doesn't make you feel as much, while Daniel Suarez, for a lot of people, especially a country, he makes people feel something. Look how popular his win was at Mexico earlier this year. A lot of people were really happy about Daniel Suarez picking up the win with Junior Motorsports at Mexico earlier this year. And in particular, I think Suarez is a little bit of an upgrade, though talent-wise, Suarez isn't going to exactly set the world on fire. Justin Haley, in his defense, so he deserves a lot of credit for putting up with a lot of stuff this year. He lost his crew chief at the beginning of the year who got fired. He lost his car chief over to Junior Joe Gibbs Racing, that being Cheddar Smith. And then all his pit crew members got swapped over to Kyle Larson. So I think it's an issue with the 7 car in general. And then the big question you have to ask yourself is, if Suarez goes there, does he get a new crew chief? Does his current crew chief in the number 99, Matt Swiderski, follow him over to Spire perhaps? Or does he work once again with Ryan Sparks? I would have to think you get Matt McCall to be the crew chief next year. Matt McCall is a solid guy. He works over there at Spire. That would make a lot of sense at this point. Or maybe get someone like an Andrew Overstreet to come in at this point next year, though I think Andrew Overstreet will be working with Allgaier next year at this point. But expect to see Suarez joining up with Spire next year. An announcement is coming in the near future, and we probably think that announcement is coming in the coming weeks at this point. So, that's here today's Law NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. How do you think Daniel Suarez will do at Spire Motorsports next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. More thoughts about Justin Haley returning to RCR next season? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, we are going to be doing a silly season talk. We're going to talk about the top 10 free agents remaining on the market that are not officially signed for 2026 at this point, and also do Truck Series race picks for the upcoming event at Martinsville. Then Wednesday, we'll have Cup a news video, and then we'll have Cup race picks for Xfinity race picks for Martinsville. Then Thursday, Cup race picks, along with the paint skin video potentially. And then on Friday, we'll have the truck review and NASCAR news video. And then on Saturday, Sunday, reactions, Cup qualifying, Xfinity qualifying, among other things as well. We got a lot of content coming up. People like Haley Deegan, Shaman Gisberg, Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bo Wallace, Ross Chastain, Sheldon Chris, Sam Mary, Frankie Muniz, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Ryan Preece, Cletus Savard, Dodge Ram, Brock Feeney, Will Brown, Cam Waters, among other things to talk about on the channel in the coming days and weeks as well. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode. I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content, other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.